Okay, we're going to dig right into a very important topic today. By the way, I'm Alexa Bigwarf, your host for the Women in Publishing Summit. If this is your first interview and you don't know me yet, we are pulling together women from all over the world, really, which is super exciting this year, to bring you tips, tools, and resources to help you in your journey to writing, publishing, and selling your book. So today we are going to dig into the nuts and bolts of self-publishing. Throughout the conference, we're talking about different routes to publishing your book through self-publishing, hybrid publishing, traditional publishing, all those routes. There's no right or wrong answer. It's what works best for you and for your book and what you're able to achieve. So today we are talking right now with Jodi Brandon. She has more than 20 years experience in book publishing. After graduating with degrees in English and business, she spent many years working in traditional publishing in-house at a Big Four, a book packager, and a niche publisher. So it brings a lot of really interesting insight while we're talking about self-publishing. She also comes from a full background of traditional publishing and that route as well. Jodi launched her freelance editing business when she and her husband relocated from New York to Philadelphia, and today she works primarily as a book editor and a writing publishing coach for creative entrepreneurs, bloggers, small business owners, and solopreneurs who want to grow their business with the book. So you can find her at jodibrandoneditorial.com, and we will have all of her links below. Thank you so much for being here, Jodi.
Thank you for having me. I love this event.
Well, thank you. I love interviewing colleagues because it's really kind of fun. I mean, Jodi and I shuffle clients back and forth and work together on a regular basis, but it's always kind of nice to dig more into their brains and figure out what's really going on and be able to get the insight and information out. So this is fun. All right, so I'm curious, with an editor and with all the experience that you have, why did you decide that you wanted to talk about self-publishing for this conference?
Well, most of my clients these days are self-publishing by choice, and I feel like one of my most popular blog posts ever is it's called Self-Publishing, Ugly Stepsister No More. Because I feel like self-publishing had such a bad rap in the publishing world for so long.
Yeah.
And anybody who worked in self-publishing in any way, the rest of the publishing industry kind of like thumbed their noses at it.
Right.
And it's really become sort of like, it's grown into this, this industry of its own. It really is not, like anything to be like, people used to self-publish because they couldn't get a traditional book deal.
Right.
And people worked with self-publishing clients because they couldn't, get a job at like a traditional book publisher. And I just feel like it was so crappy. And, now it's become this whole, industry into itself that's, like worthy and respectable and all of these things. And most of my clients now choose to self-publish just for the control aspect. I mean, most of my clients are entrepreneurs.
Right.
So they're used to, kind of calling the shots and being in charge. And they like that part of it that comes with self-publishing. So, and I think it's, it's the future. Like, I think it's a huge part of the future of the publishing industry.
So it's interesting. I would agree with you. I think on the entrepreneur side, like it's a no-brainer for most people. They have content, they want to get it out. There's not even really any point in trying to go the traditional route because they already have their audience and who they're trying to sell it to.
Right.
Or they're using their book to grow it, their audience, and can't. 2 years in the making just doesn't make sense.
Right.
I still see in my group, which you're a part of, the Write Publish Sell group on Facebook, I still see on the fiction side a lot of pull and hesitation, which I find interesting. There's still that paradigm you were going.
Well, I think fiction and nonfiction, first of all, are so different. And I don't edit fiction, so I take this with a grain of salt. But from what I see and hear, it's harder there's so many more fiction books that are self-published, like percentage-wise, right, that it's harder to, it seems like it's harder to be seen as legitimate.
Okay.
When you're self-publishing fiction. So I do understand the hesitation, but honestly, like the cachet, okay, you get the cachet of being published by a traditional publisher, but like, do most people even know who the publishers are these days? No, because they're all gobbled up by, unless you're being published by Random House, nobody's ever heard of your publisher anyway.
Right.
And you know, what you used to really get, all the marketing help, that's gone.
Right.
I mean, marketing budgets at publishing houses are, I mean, when I first started in publishing, that was a thing. I mean, we had like a party for an author almost every afternoon at 3 o'clock. Everybody would gather, like literally there was cake every day. I was like, this is the best place ever.
Oh my God.
Literally at 3 o'clock every day, everybody would go up to the conference room on like the 22nd floor or whatever the heck it was. And, you know, some author would be in there kicking off their book tour, and we'd have like cake and champagne every day.
Yeah.
I mean, those days, unless you're, you know, one of like the top 5 writers in the world, it's gone. Those budgets are not there.
You know, and it's funny because I don't know if you've seen this series, but or they only did one season, which broke my heart. But they Amazon Prime did a show called Zelda. It was about F. Fitzgerald and his wife. And when you're talking about that, it reminds me of like, yeah, the days of past when you could, like, if you wrote one best-selling book, you were living the high life,
living the dream. Yep.
Yeah, and it's just that's just not the case anymore. And I love your point about the marketing. And people still ask me a lot of times, like, if they go the traditional route, do the things that I teach still apply to them? And I'm like, well, yes, because
because you're doing it still.
Is not going to be marketing for you all the things that Jodi just said. Like, you still really have to know the ins and outs. Even if you're with the publisher, you still really have to know and understand the publishing industry, and when it's appropriate to send your book, and where it's appropriate to send your book, and why the timelines are the way they are. So I would assume that you are very similar, and your thought process is like Brooke Warner from She Writes Press, because she worked in the traditional publishing world for a very long time. And the reason she set up She Writes Press, which is a hybrid publisher, and for those of you who haven't watched anything on hybrid publishing yet, it's a partnership model where you still invest financially to take on some of the risk that comes with publishing. But other than that financial investment, you'd never know you weren't being published traditionally, except for your paycheck, because you get 60%.
Exactly. You're keeping the money.
Right, instead of 10, usually with traditional publishing. So anyway, Brooke has been interviewed on this for a couple of years, and she said, you know, there were so many good books that were coming to me, and I could not take them. I could not publish them because of X, Y, and Z. So I saw this, you know, route to help people get their books out there anyway. Is that something that you also experienced in the traditional world, that it was too much?
Yeah, it's so saturated, and it's so hard to, you know, find your niche in traditional publishing, because they're just, I mean, I get it financially. I mean, all that cake and champagne that I drank 20 years ago, like, is why nobody can get any money now. I mean, like, the publishing industry financially got itself into this horrible, you know, situation where now it's so, you have to, you know, already have the platform. All of the things that they used to help you with, you have to have coming in now. So it's, I mean, from an author standpoint, from a writer standpoint, I mean, it doesn't make sense to do all of that work and not keep the money.
Right.
I mean, I think that the hybrid model, I think, is, I mean, self-publishing is the wave of the future, but so is hybrid publishing.
Right.
Just because there's so many people who, I mean, like, my clients are usually, they're not looking to become professional writers.
Right.
They want to write a book, maybe 2. So they're not interested in learning all of the ins and outs of Amazon. They're not interested. They don't need to know that for this one project. So a hybrid publisher, perfect for them. I mean, that's where I'm advising most of them to go, because they want somebody who, you know, they hire me for editing, and then they're like, well, could you also help with this? And I'm like, not really. That's not really my zone of genius. You need somebody who, like, really understands Amazon, or you need somebody who really understands Ingram Spark, and you know, all of those things that come after production. Right. The editors don't know about. So the hybrid, I mean, model is perfect for them. But for people who want to, you know, become professional writers, a lot of them, yeah, like, it does make more sense for them to learn and just straight self-publish.
Absolutely. Well,
but go ahead.
You know, you can finish that.
I just think we're moving away from the traditional publishing model and into these other, you know, I mean, listen, taken forever. The publishing industry is finally catching on, you know, that it's 2019 and the way that we've done things since, you know, 1940, maybe we need to shake it up a little bit.
Right. Well, and it's interesting because in the past 10 years, as we've seen this like absolute explosion of self-publishing and the addition of the ebook and things like that, you know, there was a phase where everyone was like, oh, the print book is going to die, bookstores are going to die. And clearly that hasn't happened. In fact, I think we're actually seeing a resurgence where people are like, I miss holding that book in my hand, you know?
Yeah.
And there are certain types of books that just lend much better to a print version than I can read fiction on a Kindle all day long, but my nonfiction books where I want to write in the margins and take notes, do the exercises, like it just doesn't do well. I wanted to circle back to a point though that you started to make, which I think is so excellent, and that is the amount of knowledge that comes with self-publishing. And I think that you're absolutely right with entrepreneurs and with people who are doing just one or two books. Like it's enough just to kind of have a basic understanding of where you should be in the categories,
Sure.
and what keywords you need to have and all that kind of stuff. Because you're probably not gunning for like top of every category on Amazon, New York Times bestseller, all of those kinds of things. For me, that was the biggest surprise because I came in and self-published and thought, you know, everybody's doing it now, so it can't be that difficult. And true, it is true. Anybody can write a book and get it on Amazon anywhere. 100% by yourself, you could probably do it in a day if you already had something written, you know, and a cover that'll pass. It's all the other things that you have no idea about. And then you're like, oh, snap, I didn't realize all my words were in the margins. Or
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's all the stuff that you don't even know that you don't know.
So if you are helping somebody through a process, now you largely function as an editor, but you do the book coaching. Does that kind of come in as people come to you as an editor and then they have all these questions because they're like, how do
sometimes it works that way. And then sometimes it's like earlier on, they're like, I don't even know how to start.
Right.
What do I do? So it kind of functions both ways. Like it can start here and go backwards, or it can start here and go forward. But yeah, I mean, they just, I mean, a lot of people know that they want to write a book. In the case of my clients, they know it's going to serve their business, but they don't understand, you know, like what do I actually have to do?
Right.
And yeah, I mean, it's so much more than just, you know, slapping a cover on, you know, some words that you wrote last weekend and, you know, posting up on Amazon. I mean, you could do that,
right.
But I mean, I feel like that's not really going to serve you or your brand or your business or whatever, you know, well.
What are some of the starting steps then for anybody who is just brand new and thinking, yeah, I'm gonna do it this way? How would you advise them to just get started in the process?
The publishing process or the writing process?
Well, wherever. Let's do it.
Okay. I mean, like first and foremost, no matter what your path to publication is going to be. I mean, I always tell my clients when even before their clients, when people come to me for like a discovery session, you have to have a solid book. It doesn't matter like how you're going to get that book out into the market, self-publishing, traditional, hybrid, whatever. You have to have a solid book to start. So, I mean, you really need to, you know, do your homework, figure out, you know, is this what your people want? You know, what's the best way to get it to them? All of those sorts of things. And then you figure out your path to publication and what makes the most sense for you. I mean, do you want to give up that creative control? Do you want to, you know, keep control of the timeline? All of those sorts of things then factor into how you're going to decide how you're going to move forward once you have that book. But I mean, without a solid foundation, which is the book itself, it doesn't matter how you try to get to market, it's not going to work. And the other thing is, there's no one right way. I mean, we're talking a lot about how great self-publishing is today. Traditional publishing is the right way for some people. I mean, there's, you know, so I mean, don't be dissuaded by, oh, well, if Jodi and Alexa say self-publishing is what we should do, that's what we should do. I mean, I'd like it. Listen, if we ruled the world, it would be great. But I mean, there are people for whom traditional publishing is the right way to go, you know, and I mean, so you have to weigh the pros and cons yourself and figure out, you know, what makes the most sense for you and what your goals are for your book. So think about what the goals are too. Is your goal just to make money? Well, if your goal is just to make money, then you better pay darn good attention to what's happening on Amazon and your keywords and all of that. If your goal is to, you know, build up credibility so that you then can use your book as a, you know, a tool for your business as like a stepping stone to get people into your one-on-one programs or your coaching package or whatever, then you're less interested in doing well on Amazon and more interested in, you know, like your own market. Your email lists and all of those sorts of, you know, your social media, those sorts of outlets. So it's an individualized process that you have to figure out for yourself what your goals are and how you can best get there. And it's not that, you know, it's not the same for everybody. But I do think it's easier to get there with self-publishing, no matter what your goals are these days for a lot of people.
Yeah, I would agree. And, you know, and the thing I would say is that if you are like really, really, really bent on being traditionally published, I mean, give it a shot, send out, try and find an agent, do all those things. But don't be afraid of self-publishing first so that you can build your audience, so that you can get your first bad book out of the way, because nobody writes, very few people write the masterpiece the first time around.
Right.
You know, and do those things. And that might be a great time to just kind of lay out like for what the biggest differences would be between self-publishing, someone who chooses to self-publish versus traditional publish.
I think the biggest difference, honestly, is the gatekeepers.
Yeah, true.
I mean, you control the process from start to finish when you're self-publishing. And when you're traditionally publishing, a lot of times you don't. I mean, you can't just most publishers now, you can't even send them your manuscript just from you. You have to go through an agent. Mm-hmm. So you're doing the work to find a publisher that you are targeting, but also before that, then you have to find the agent that that accepts your kind of work, that works with the kinds of publishers you want to look at, all of those things. So there's more gatekeepers along the way. Whereas, I mean, self-publishing, you still have decisions to make, of course, especially, if you're not using a hybrid publisher, if you really are doing it all on your own, you know, you're deciding, am I hiring an editor? Which editor? Am I hiring a designer? Which designer? Am I hiring, you know, who's going to distribute the book? Who's going to print the book? All of those things. So there's a lot more homework to do, I think, when you self-publish. Yeah. But you're your only gatekeeper. So you go at your pace, versus traditional publishing, which, I mean, you hinted at it. I mean, the time to market from finished manuscript to finished book in your hand, I mean, on average, it's 18 months.
Right.
I mean, can you remember what you're doing 18 months ago? I mean, if you're writing a book about nonfiction, especially, you know, a timely topic. I just was talking to somebody yesterday, and her book is going to be about marketing. And she's like, so I should self-publish, right? I said, right. Well, yes. I said, by the time you saw a proof of your book, it would be outdated.
Right.
So, you know, I mean, you've got to think about that too.
That is so true.
You can just get through the whole process so much faster and have a finished book in your hand, you know, when you're controlling the timeline.
Yes. On that note, yeah, I was just talking to somebody the other day who had like their second book in their series was already done, but they were just getting into the cycle, and their book wouldn't even be published for another like a year and a half, 2 years. Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so painful. That's so painful. But, you know, for some people, it absolutely is the right option to do for many, many reasons. One of the things that I do want to have you talk about a little bit, if you can get into it, is I know you focus mostly on nonfiction, but I think you probably have a good insight. There is a difference when you are trying to traditionally publish, when you have a fiction book versus a nonfiction book, in terms of your proposal and all those kinds of things that you send out and how you do it, correct?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. And every publisher and every literary agent have their own specifications, what they're looking for, what that proposal package has to look like.
Right.
I know for fiction, I mean, they're more interested in, there's a big focus, I know, of fiction on like the synopsis, like what's the plot of the story? Like, who are these characters? What's happening in the story? Is the story compelling? Whereas in nonfiction, you're usually teaching something. So they're more interested in, not more interested in, but they're interested in, you know, like your writing style. Like, are you able to teach through your writing?
Right.
So, and that, like you're always going to need, the table of contents, the one page, sort of synopsis. And then the publishers will want, and agents want something different. Like sometimes it's 2 chapters, sometimes it's 5 chapters, sometimes it's no chapters. It's really just, it depends on what they're looking for. So you really have to pay attention to, if you're going that route, the traditional model, what do they require and when do they require it? And then you also, I don't work in fiction, so I haven't had this happen, but I've heard of where, you get an agent that says, oh, I'm interested in your book, send me the rest. And you've only written that first couple of drafts or chapters. You don't have the whole book. So then you're trying to crank out an entire, novel in 3 weeks to send it to this agent. And then it's crap. And they're like, oh, well, these 2 chapters were great, but the rest, what happened here? So you just kind of have to be aware of all of those, like external requirements based on what path you're looking for.
So the main takeaway there is that if you are seeking to do the traditional route, you need to do some homework.
Do your homework, absolutely.
It's going to take a lot of work, actually, because just to recap what Jodi just said, you have to find an agent that represents your type. Not all agents take all kinds of work. If you are writing a Christian fiction book about dogs, you need to go Google women, or it doesn't have to be a woman, agents who represent Christian fiction primarily. And then if you can find someone who likes sled team books, that's their thing, dog team, that's even better. So, that you have to find them. Then once you've found a list of people, then you have to make sure you understand their requirements and make sure you follow. I've been told this by agent after agent. If you do not follow their submission requirements, you're out.
You're out. Yeah, no, they're not even looking at it. Yeah, that is true. I know that from my in-house publishing days. Because obviously you work a lot with agents, and they get so many manuscripts that they just don't. If you can't follow their basic directions, even if you've written the best book ever, they're going to pass on it because they don't have that kind of time to waste.
Exactly, because they're getting 75 submissions a day.
Absolutely, the slush pile that we talk about in publishing is a real thing. When I first started in publishing, my publishing house accepted agented and non-agented manuscripts. So we did have stuff coming in just from, if I wrote a book and sent it to the publisher, but each one is this big. It's hundreds of pages of paper, and they're just piled up in corners everywhere you look at a publishing house. That's why they call it the slush pile, because they get literally piled up. And then every night, everybody had to take a couple things home to read on the train on the way home or over the weekend or whatever. It's insane to think that that's how the entire industry was run 20 years ago.
But it makes very much sense, why it's so important that you're edited, you have to before you send in, that it's clean, that it's compelling, that you understand how to write well, and all the mechanics that go behind it. Because if I'm writing home on the train and I have 10 manuscripts to read through and the first 2 pages are crap,
I'm done. I'm not reading further.
Right.
Yep.
So that's good to know. So, this makes a compelling argument for self-publishing, but I will say the same rules apply. Your readers do not want to read crap.
Right. Yeah.
So,
absolutely. No, you still want to do it. I preach to my clients all the time. You want to do it the right way. Right. Just because you're self-publishing doesn't mean it's the easy way out.
Exactly.
You still want to produce a quality product, a compelling story, and have it professionally edited and designed and all of those things. And there's tons of people out there like us to help you.
Right.
It's just so you create your budget, you find the people who can help you within that budget, and you put out there the best product that you can.
And that's a very, very good segue to another topic that you had mentioned wanting to discuss, and that is building a team, which is a topic I love to talk about. I was supposed to talk about it at IBPA, but I wasn't able to go because of a death in the family, which was tragic. But it's so important that you understand that just self-publishing doesn't mean that you're all alone. Like I prefer to use the term actually indie publishing, because you're publishing independently, because then you're not like, okay, I'm all by myself, because you do want to put together a good team.
Right.
So let's talk about that team. Who are we going to have?
Okay, so if you're traditionally publishing, I mean, your team is basically going to be your agent, and then your agent finds you your publisher, which is the rest of your team. So the agent is the most important person if you're traditionally publishing. If you're self-publishing, then I mean, you want to find either need to find like a project manager who basically performs the role of a hybrid publisher for you, to handle the editing, the proofreading, the interior layout, the cover. I mean, the cover is so important. I mean, every reader knows that. I mean, the cover is just, it's the book's first impression.
Yes.
And, so you really want to make sure that it's not, a template that 1,500 other people have with, just your words on the front, and that it, sort of matches the genre of your book. And, but you need all of those people, and you can find them on your own, piece your own team together. And a lot of people, as my clients, love to do that, because again, they're owners of their own business. They like to be in charge. They like to be the decision maker. But then there's people who are like, no, this is not my wheelhouse. You tell me who I need. And then, I mean, they're perfect candidates for, a hybrid publisher, which, because they just, take the pressure off. They find you some of those other people that make up your team, to get your book to be what it needs to be. It needs to be, professionally edited. It needs to be professionally laid out. You need to have a launch plan in place. I mean, most of us are not marketing and publicity experts, and we need, I tell my clients a lot of the time, launching a book is similar to launching, a new product, a new service in your business, but it's also totally different.
Right.
Which, I mean, I know like sounds so silly, but so you can follow some of the same, guidelines that you follow when you're launching something new. But a book is its own beast. You don't have, like, it's for sale from this date to this date. No, it's for sale now forever until you take it down off of Amazon.
Yes. That's what I was going to piggyback on, that is that I see this a lot with entrepreneurs, because they're used to doing big launches.
Yep.
Culminate in the launch.
Uh-huh.
These big, massive campaigns, run it at full speed, launch the book, and then
crickets.
Done.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, honey, you're
just getting started.
And they realize that 30 days later, when
absolutely
stopped, and they're like, wait, what happened? Like, you launched a product and you didn't continue.
Right. Yeah. So it's the long game now. It's a marathon.
Yes, exactly.
So you have to, I mean, you want that big push when the book first comes out, but you need to be thinking long term also. I mean, my book came out 2 years ago and I'm still marketing it. I mean, you have to, or you should be. I mean, I guess you don't have to, but you should be. So,
I mean, unless you just hit the gold mine and it is up there. But I mean, I use this analogy all the time. And if McDonald's and Coca-Cola still have to run paid promotion, why on earth would somebody that nobody knows think they don't have to be promoting their product?
Right. Yeah.
I'm not trying to be.
The point though is, I mean, you don't know what you don't know.
Right. Exactly.
And I mean, especially with things change so fast with Amazon. And I mean, and I have a love-hate relationship with Amazon, because, like, I mean, like, they're getting too big for their britches. I get it. But like, also that's where people are going to buy books. A lot of people. So, I mean, I had a client of later last year, and she was like, I think I'm not going to even like put my book on Amazon. I was like,
tell me this. And I was like, why?
Yeah. I'm like, no, you got to listen, I don't like to tell you what to do, but like, put your book on Amazon. You know what I mean? But especially now with like CreateSpace and KDP merging, like you get more keywords.
Yeah.
How many people don't know that? How many people have a book up on Amazon right now who self-published that have no idea now that they can like redo their book page? They've got more keywords, categories, all of that. So you need somebody on your team who can guide you with that. Right. While you're doing your marketing thing and all that, let somebody else handle those technical details. That's not your zone of genius, most likely.
Right.
So, I mean, if you can, you know, if you can structure your budget that way to have somebody handling those things, do it.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And I mean, the other thing is, I know a lot of people choose the self-publishing route because of cost and editing.
Mhm.
I mean, you're a professional editing. Let's just, on average, how much is editing going to cost?
I mean, on average, copy editing, probably like $2,000 ish.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And
Yeah.
I've seen books go like into the $5,000-$6,000 if they really need a lot of.
Yeah.
But you
Well,
should.
especially, I mean, fiction a lot of time needs a lot more like developmental editing. Yeah.
Exactly. So, I mean, if you're doing a professional edit, you already, which you should be, for the love
Right.
of God, if you don't pay for anything else, have a good edit.
Yeah.
And a good cover. I can never say not have a good cover.
Yeah. Agreed.
But a cover, I mean, a cover, you can hire somebody. I mean, we don't usually spend more than $300 and have excellent
Yeah.
covers. So, you know, if you're shopping for a cover designer and you're getting a quote back for like $500, $600, $1,000, come ask me where to go, because that's a lot of money unless you're having like hand painted art or something on the
Right. Yeah.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
But you know, so right there you're looking at, let's just say $2,500 minimum. So yes, it's a big investment, but why pay all that money into putting together a good book and not consider the fact that and not consider marketing, is what I'm getting to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to be able to market. So having someone on your team who is helping you with the launch strategy, or, I mean, there's lots of materials out there at low cost courses, books that you can get for $9-10
Mm-hmm.
that will teach you the strategies if you're willing to spend the time to go through that and do that. I have a $27 market your book course. I mean, it's, you know, there's lots of low.
Yeah, you can bootstrap it. I mean, the flip side of that though is like, yes, you're paying for more up front. You're making those investments up front, but you're keeping so much more of the money on the back end.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
If you're selling the book.
If you're selling the book. Yeah. Right.
And that's
but that's where it all ties in though. So you're doing that, you're putting forth that marketing effort to help sell the book. You're making that investment early on to make a good quality product that's easier to sell than something that, you know, like your high school librarian did the editing for. I mean,
exactly.
So, I mean, there's ways to bootstrap it, but there's right ways to bootstrap it also.
Exactly. So ideally, you know, okay, so we've talked about good cover. Obviously, cover designer, graphic artist needs to be on your team. And I would say make sure that you quiz this person and make sure that they know how to do an actual book cover. Because there's graphic artists that can do ebook covers, but they don't know the ins and outs of the print cover. And if you need more information on this, we just did a great panel on book design, talking about the cover and the interior and all those things.
Awesome.
Make sure you go watch that video because they gave some great advice and tips on that. Okay, so then you have your editor, which is like one of the most important people, if not the most important person, if you're self-publishing on your team, especially if they're like Jodi, who have big picture publishing knowledge and understanding. You may have a project manager or somebody who is coaching you through a book shepherd, if you will, and then marketing. Have we forgotten anybody?
I mean, you can have somebody that handles, you know, sort of like the techie stuff at the end.
Like admin,
you know, like converting the files for, I mean, you can do all of it. I mean, if I can do it, anybody can do it. But I mean, but not everybody wants to do it and wants the headache. You know what I mean? Right. So you can hire somebody to handle that, you know, the ebook conversion and all of that kind of stuff. You know, and then, I mean, honestly, a lot of my clients now are thinking, they think about like VAs, virtual assistants, to handle, you know, their social media and, you know, like checking the royalty statements and working with Ingram Spark to get, you know, like their paperbacks and all of that kind of thing. So, I mean, you can there's a million people you could hire, but I mean, like the bare minimum is who we've discussed. Right. So.
Absolutely. And then you take on the role of either managing it yourself or bringing in somebody else to manage it for
Right.
you. So it really depends on what you want to control and what you have the
Mhm.
time and space for. And sometimes people need to do it all. I totally appreciate that. My first
Yep.
time around, I did not have the budget to bring on anything more than I could.
Yeah.
And other people would much rather trade their dollars for time because
Mhm.
they know that they can be doing, building their businesses.
Right. Yeah. Other things. Yeah.
Okay, so I think the final piece then is to really give people a good picture. We've talked about the fact that you can control the timeline as a self-published author, but realistically, to do all the things the right way, what is the minimum amount of time you believe? And I realize that this can vary all over the place from if they come with their book already written or if they're just
Mhm.
starting. But let's say they're writing the book right now. Realistically, timeline.
I I usually tell people 6 months minimum, um, because you don't know how long the book's going to take to write.
Mhm.
Um, and a lot of people think it's going to go a lot faster than it is.
Right.
Um, and it usually doesn't. But I mean, then you've got to, you've got to allow, I mean, so I usually take about 6 weeks to edit like a 40 to 50,000 word book. A fiction book's going to be longer than that. Some nonfiction shorter, some is longer. So, I mean, it's just, you've got to find the people you're working with and what their timelines are. But you figure like 2 months for editing, 1 month for design, and then you've got all of the uploading and approval of
Right.
the proof copies and all that kind of stuff at the end. You have to allow buffer time for each stage of the process. So, I mean, we usually, when I'm working with a coaching client, we build out like a 6 month schedule.
Right.
And that, as long as the writing stays on track, then everything else stays on track. But I mean, that the organization is important just because you're booking these people in advance. You're booking your vendors, your editor, your designer, your marketing folks. And if the writing gets off the rails and you're not ready to go, if you say you're going to have your book to your editor by April 1st and you're not ready by April 1st, well, then the edit's not going to be finished to go to the designer by June 1st. It's not going to be ready to get, into the marketing, all of those things sort of like topple like dominoes.
Right.
So, I mean, I would rather see people give themselves extra time than be like, oh no, I can get it done I'll be done writing in a month.
Right.
Let's just, get started sooner.
Yeah, I
So,
agree. You can, I think it's always good to give yourself breathing space just in case.
yeah.
Okay, this has been great. Thank you so much for walking through this. It's really helpful to have somebody who understands both traditional and self-publishing. And I would say that, if people have questions, I'm sure you would be happy to answer them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
We'll have all of Jodi's information in the notes. Where's the best place for people to reach out to you? How do you prefer to be contacted?
Email. Email's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'll be in
Yep.
the show notes. And
Yeah.
then also for our All Access Pass members, Jodi is giving e-copies of her book, Write, Publish, Market. So that is very helpful as well. Jodi and I are on the same theme here. Write, publish, sell, write, publish,
Yeah.
market. There's only so many ways you can say it, right?
I know, right? Exactly. That's fun.
Oh goodness. But thank you so much for your time. It's always a pleasure.
Oh, it was my pleasure. It was so fun.
Yes. All right. Have a great day.